SpongeBob always thought that if he could just keep everyone around him happy, he'd finally feel like he had it all figured out, like he was part of something bigger. Instead, he finds himself lost in the chaos of pleasing others, never truly feeling seen. SpongeBob SquarePants has always been a goofy, carefree show about underwater adventures, friendships, and laughs, but it also asks something much deeper. What happens when the person who's always giving everything to others forgets who they are in the process? That question comes to the forefront in I'm with Stupid. On one side, there's SpongeBob, the relentlessly positive, always helpful friend who spent his whole life trying to make everyone else's world a little brighter. On the other, there's the SpongeBob who's buried beneath the pressure of being everything for everyone, until he realizes he's lost himself completely. In this video, we're going to talk about I'm with Stupid, and how SpongeBob's struggle to maintain his identity while trying to fit into everyone else's world shows what happens when you lose yourself just to make others happy. Before we continue the story, make sure to hit the subscribe button. The moment Patrick whines about his problems, SpongeBob just throws himself under the bus without a second thought. It's honestly painful to watch. He literally decides to become a completely different person. That stupid helmet becomes like a wall between who he really is and what everyone else sees, and it's basically SpongeBob choosing to hide everything good about himself just to make Patrick feel better. What really gets me is how fast SpongeBob says yes to this garbage plan. Zero hesitation, doesn't even think about what this is going to do to him. It shows this really messed up thing about SpongeBob that nobody talks about. He's addicted to making other people happy, even when it destroys him. We see this crap all the time in the show. SpongeBob will literally set himself on fire if it makes someone else smile for 5 seconds, and everyone acts like that's adorable instead of deeply screwed up. And the worst part is that SpongeBob actually thinks he's doing something good here. He genuinely believes that pretending to be an idiot is somehow helping Patrick. This is a guy who's naturally smart, curious, and loves figuring things out, and he's forcing himself to act confused and slow and disconnected from everything. It's not just fake, it's like he's beating up his own personality. Every minute he keeps up this stupid act is another minute he's basically telling himself that who he really is isn't good enough. And for what? So Patrick can feel superior to someone for once in his life? This episode hits on something really messed up that we've all experienced. What happens when you fake being someone else for so long that everyone forgets who you really are? You can see SpongeBob struggling with this fake act throughout the whole thing. He keeps almost slipping up, almost showing his real smart self, but then catches himself and goes back to acting dumb. It's honestly hard to watch because you know he's dying inside. But things get even darker when Patrick's parents stop seeing the act as an act at all. Patrick's parents actually start believing he is stupid, and even worse, Patrick starts buying into it too. This shows something really ugly about how people think. Once someone acts like they're less than what they are, everyone around them just accepts that as the truth. It doesn't matter that SpongeBob is actually smart, curious, and can hold real conversations. Once he gets labeled as the dumb one, everything he does gets seen through that lens. When SpongeBob stumbles, nobody thinks, oh, he's just acting clumsy. They think, wow, he really is clumsy. When he acts confused, they don't see it as fake confusion. They see it as proof that he's genuinely stupid. All the things that actually make SpongeBob awesome, his excitement about life, his willingness to help people, his genuine kindness, get twisted into evidence that he's just some simpleton who doesn't know any better. The really sick part is that SpongeBob started this whole thing because he wanted to help Patrick feel better about himself. But this nice act of destroying himself becomes dangerous when everyone, including Patrick, starts treating the fake version like it's real. As Patrick gets more comfortable being the smart one, we watch him turn into something really ugly. The Patrick who was grateful at first starts actually enjoying SpongeBob's fake stupidity, making meaner and meaner jokes because he's getting high off of finally being the superior one for once. This whole thing shows how fast friendships can get totally screwed up when power gets involved, and how the person who started the mess ends up getting hurt the worst. That kitchen scene where SpongeBob tries to remind Patrick about their deal, that's where everything falls apart. SpongeBob drops the stupid act and tries to talk to his friend like a real person, but Patrick either can't remember or doesn't want to remember what they planned. He's gotten too addicted to being called smart for once in his life. This moment captures something brutal. How quickly people forget the real you once you start acting like someone else. And honestly, Patrick's forgetfulness seems pretty fake. It's not that he actually forgot about their plan. It's that remembering would mean giving up all the praise he's getting. For probably the first time ever, people are calling Patrick intelligent. They're treating him like he matters. The rush of finally not being the joke is so good he'll throw SpongeBob under the bus to keep it going. This shows something really ugly about people. We'll protect anything that makes us feel good about ourselves, even when we know it's built on lies. Patrick's been the target of dumb jokes his whole life, so suddenly being the smart one feels incredible. But this creates this sick situation where SpongeBob's sacrifice becomes completely invisible. Every time Patrick and his parents laugh at stupid SpongeBob, they're basically erasing another piece of who he really is. SpongeBob starts sounding desperate when he tries to show his real intelligence because nobody believes him anymore. All this identity destruction builds up to the moment when SpongeBob finally explodes. After taking more and more cruel treatment, something inside him just breaks. Not just anger, but his real self literally refusing to stay buried anymore. His true personality basically fights its way back to the surface because it can't stand being hidden any longer. When SpongeBob takes off that helmet and tells Patrick's parents the truth, you can see how desperate he is just to be seen as himself again. He's completely broken down, begging these people to recognize that he's actually smart, but the reaction is absolutely crushing. They don't see his intelligence as real. Instead, they think Patrick taught him how to be smart, like SpongeBob is some kind of trained pet who learned a few tricks. This is the nightmare scenario of what happens when people decide you're stupid. Even when you prove them wrong, they won't believe it's really you. The moment SpongeBob realizes that even showing his true self doesn't work, that he's not just being ignored, but his intelligence is actually being credited to Patrick, that's when he completely loses it. His dramatic crash through the wall is him literally breaking through all the fake barriers that were trapping him, showing that sometimes you have to do something extreme to get your real self back when being nice about it doesn't work. But here's where the episode gets really twisted. It turns out Patrick's parents are just random strangers. This shows how we sometimes destroy ourselves trying to impress people who don't even matter. SpongeBob went through genuine psychological torture for the approval of two people who had zero connection to Patrick's actual life. It's a sick reminder of how we let complete strangers' opinions mess with our heads and make us hate ourselves. When Patrick's real parents show up, their reaction is pretty chill about his basic accomplishments. This suggests that all of Patrick's fears about disappointing them were mostly in his own head. The episode wraps up the plot, but it doesn't magically fix the damage done to SpongeBob. The trauma of being treated like garbage and having his identity erased is still real, even though the whole situation was based on a stupid misunderstanding that didn't need to happen. This whole mess teaches us something important. Real friendship shouldn't require you to make yourself smaller. Sure, SpongeBob wanting to help Patrick shows he's loyal, but it becomes toxic when helping means destroying your own dignity and self-respect. The episode proves that healthy relationships need both people to actually see and value each other, not one person constantly building up the other while tearing themselves down. The show exposes how meaningless fake praise really is. When Patrick gets credit for teaching SpongeBob to be smart, he's being praised for something he never actually did. This hits on something we all need to understand. We should want people to recognize us for who we actually are, not for some fake version we think they want to see. Getting validation for being someone else is basically worthless. For SpongeBob, this should be a wake-up call about standing up for himself. His eagerness to help people usually works out fine, but when it makes him deny his own worth and intelligence, it becomes a form of self-harm. The episode is basically saying that sometimes protecting who you really are means letting people down or saying no to people you care about. And that's a hard but necessary thing to do if you want to keep your sanity. When you compare this episode to others like The Secret Box or Friend or Foe, it becomes even clearer how fragile these friendships can be. In The Secret Box, we see how trust and honesty actually made their friendship stronger, which is the complete opposite of how SpongeBob's honesty gets used against him in I'm with Stupid. And Friend or Foe shows us that even good friendships can be damaged by misunderstandings and people competing with each other, suggesting that Patrick's awful behavior probably comes from his own issues and insecurities, rather than him being genuinely evil. But honestly, does it matter why he did it when the damage to SpongeBob is still real? All these episodes together show that friendship is basically a constant battle where you have to keep figuring out what's okay and what's not. Relationships change based on the decisions people make and how much garbage they're willing to put up with. I'm with Stupid is what happens when those lines get crossed. When one friend's desperate need to feel important becomes more important than not destroying their friend's mental health. It's a harsh reality check that even your closest friendships can turn poisonous when one person gets too much power and nobody calls them out on it. The episode also shows this specific kind of emotional work that nobody ever talks about, having to constantly manage other people's problems and insecurities. SpongeBob basically becomes Patrick's personal therapist, doing all the work to make Patrick feel better about his life, but nobody ever thanks him for it or even notices he's doing it. Instead, everyone just expects it, and then when he finally breaks down, they act like he's the problem. This happens all the time in real life, where one person is always fixing everyone else's emotional mess while getting zero credit for keeping everyone together. The episode also shows how mentally exhausting it is to pretend to be someone you're not. SpongeBob's growing anger and eventual explosion shows what happens when humans are forced into fake roles that go against everything they are. You can also see how we build walls around our real selves when we're scared of what others might think. When he finally rips it off to try to prove to Patrick's parents that he's actually smart, it's not just him taking off a prop. It's him dropping all his defenses and begging to be seen as his real self. The episode shows how fast people will change their opinion of you when you keep acting a certain way, and how your own sense of who you are can get completely screwed up when you spend too much time being someone who goes against everything you actually are. What makes I'm with Stupid hit so hard is that most of us have been there. We've all felt the pressure to make ourselves smaller so that other people feel better. Whether it's dumbing down how you talk so you don't make someone feel stupid, hiding your achievements so you don't look like you're showing off, or pretending you don't get something just so someone else can feel like the smart one. This episode basically calls out that toxic behavior that we all participate in and shows us how destructive it really is. The show gets at this really painful thing about needing the people who matter to us to actually see who we are. SpongeBob's desperation to be recognized for his real self hits on something we all crave. We want to be understood and valued for who we actually are. When the people closest to us can't or won't see our real selves, it messes with our heads and makes us question everything about ourselves. It's isolating and makes you wonder if you're even worth knowing. But here's what's actually hopeful about this episode. SpongeBob eventually says enough. His experience is brutal, but watching him refuse to keep taking that treatment shows other people that they don't have to either. His dramatic breakdown and exit might seem over the top, but it represents something really important. Knowing when to remove yourself from situations where people consistently treat you like you're garbage. I'm with Stupid basically teaches us that real relationships require you to have the guts to be yourself, even when being real might mess up the fake peace everyone's trying to keep. SpongeBob's journey from willingly destroying himself to demanding that people see his real worth is something that a lot of us need to learn how to do. Too many people spend their whole lives making themselves smaller just to keep others comfortable, and this episode shows how soul-crushing that really is. Sometimes you have to be willing to make people uncomfortable if you want to be treated with basic respect. The episode hammers home that real friendships and healthy relationships need to be built on both people actually respecting each other and seeing each other's worth. When Patrick's actual parents show up and they're just happy to see him dressed and recognizing them, it shows that most of the time our fears about disappointing people are way worse in our heads than they are in real life. We torture ourselves over standards that don't even exist. The show's deep dive into identity, friendship, and being offers real lessons that hit home no matter how old you are. It reminds us that while helping people is good, it shouldn't mean destroying your own self-respect or letting people walk all over you. It shows why you need to set limits in relationships and why you have to fight for yourself when people cross those lines. Too many people think being a good friend means being a doormat, and this episode shows how toxic that thinking really is. The episode pushes us to have the guts to be real, even when being authentic makes other people uncomfortable or messes up situations that seem to be working for everyone else. It reminds us that relationships built on genuine respect and understanding, where both people can be themselves, are way stronger and more satisfying than relationships where one person constantly sacrifices themselves to keep the peace. Friendships that require you to be less than you are just elaborate performances that will eventually destroy you. In a world that constantly tells us to tone ourselves down, make ourselves easier to swallow, or hide what we're good at so we don't make others feel bad about themselves, I'm with Stupid serves as a brutal wake-up call that our real selves deserve to be seen, respected, and celebrated. The episode basically says that while fighting for authentic relationships might be messy and uncomfortable, it's always worth the battle, because you can only have real connections with people when they actually know who you are instead of some watered-down version you've created to keep everyone happy. Through SpongeBob's agonizing but ultimately freeing experience, we see that the most crucial relationship you'll ever have is with yourself, and that protecting and respecting your real identity isn't just something you owe to yourself. It's actually a gift you give to everyone else too. When you refuse to fake being someone else, you're basically telling other people they don't have to pretend either, which opens up the possibility for relationships built on honesty, mutual respect, and actually understanding each other. But let's be real here. This is way harder than it sounds. Society actively punishes people for being authentic. We're taught from childhood to shrink ourselves, to not be too much, to make others comfortable even when it makes us miserable. The episode shows us just how painful it can be to break free from these patterns, but it also shows that the alternative, living as a diminished version of yourself, is even more destructive. SpongeBob's journey proves that sometimes you have to be willing to make people uncomfortable, to disrupt fake harmony, and to risk losing relationships that were never real in the first place if you want to find connections that actually matter. If you learned anything new from this video, subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one.